What's going on, folks? Your boy Chuck here. Hey, it's one of those days, man. Today is 9/11. Trying to do this video like I promised. I'll be doing videos and different things like that. And it's one of those. It's kind of like a hard subject to bounce around, especially because if you want to get real, like a lot of this stuff gets like censored. One of the reasons of why I want to post mainly on Instagram, even though they get censored a lot as well. But I don't know if this video will make it to YouTube. I'm still debating on it because stuff like this, especially where I get my information from, it's just kind of been censored completely or banned completely. Some of the researchers that I'm gonna be quoting, and I'll give you that information, of course, at the end of this. So today we're going to be discussing really quickly. I'm going to do as quick as I can, put a lot of stuff in here, is the significance of 9/11, what happened, like what are the things that just happened practically that our government did in order to, quote unquote, keep us safer, in order to, what did it fuel, what economic changes happened, just really quickly. I'm going to bounce into that. And the possible, there's so much evidence. If you don't agree with this, it's fine, but there's so much information, and I'll give you the links to that, or I'll tell you where to find it, is that the whole thing was a giant ritual, like an actual ritual, because we have to remember that people in powers and, in high places, the elites, they have religious beliefs too, They might not be real, and you might not even believe in the spiritual world, but they do. A lot of people do, and they have this language when they speak, but we dismiss it because we don't know the religious significance of what they're saying. And there's some of it sounds Christian, some of it sounds like a little bit spiritual or new, like kind of like New Age. And you're like, what is he saying? Especially during the Bush administration, this was happening quite a bit, and in a lot of his speeches, saying, like 1,000 points of light and things like that. And that's right out of the book of like occultism and things like that. So there's obviously some occult significance there, and then there's ridiculous amounts of numbers involved, and numbers are always a tell-all. It's like a code in your face that these elites love to do, to put it right in front of you, this whole time, and they hide it in plain sight, and there's a reason for that as well. And then an even bigger significance, how is this all connected to one of the one of the biggest biblical prophecies in the Bible? It's probably the biggest, the most important. So I'm going to cover that in this little video. So if that interests you, the occult significance of 9/11, how is this connected to the Bible, and why are they doing this? Then you might like this video. So let's get started. First of all, I don't want to take anything away from this day. This day was like a horrific, terrible event. People died, and it was very unfortunate. The circumstances, like all these things that happened, my heart goes out to the families and to the police officers and firefighters and just civilians, heroes that were trying to manage through that day, that horrible day that really it changed the world. So I'm not taking away from any of that. Okay, this is just, unfortunately, it's a subject that got to be covered kind of delicately because, I understand it's a delicate subject. So that being said, so what I want to get into is this. First of all, my claim is never that, this is going to come off like conspiratorial. And so it's like, oh yeah, this is conspiracy. But at one point, how many coincidences do you have to have in order for you to finally be like, whoa, this is a little too many coincidences, even in a court of law, when there's so much circumstantial evidence, it sometimes proves what they're trying to prove true, because there is really too many ridiculous, quote unquote, coincidences where you're just like, this is something worth looking into, So we just want to get to the bottom of this as far as like truth, and if you don't want to get into that, that's it's fine. But here I got some notes here, and first thing I got to do is explain the Hegelian dialectic. I lost you. I'm sorry. I know it sounds boring, but check it out. This is what it means. The Hegelian dialectic. is where the ruling elite create a problem, anticipating in advance the reaction of a population to the crisis and thus conditioning the people to call for a change. When the population is properly conditioned and the desired agenda of the ruling elite is presented as the solution they present is not intended to solve the problem, but to serve as the basis for a new problem or exacerbate the existing one. When the newly created problem reaches boiling point, it becomes the foundation for the people to clamor for change again. This process is repeated over and over, all the time, moving society towards whatever endpoint they have in mind. Problem, reaction, solution. So during this time when 9/11 happened, there was a lot of things happening that were a little bit suspicious. First of all, the Pentagon lost a lot of money, a lot of money. And if we remember correctly, they were one of the ones hit supposedly by an airplane. And if you know a little bit about this, you know exactly why I said supposedly, but I don't want to get into all the details because I'll never finish this video. And the whole point was to steer everyone into terror, into thinking we have an enemy. We have to go, we got to go to the Middle East. We have an enemy. And then, of course, we have a new terrorist group. And I want you guys to think, because if you see movies from the 90s before and earlier, all our movies about terrorism are the Middle East, okay? Conditioning all of us to like, oh, yeah, we got enemies, I think I saw a roast once, and a comedian was making fun of Bruce Willis, saying he's so old that he was making movies when our terrorists were still Middle Eastern and not Russian and things like that. I think something like that. I could be misquoting the thing, but that's the whole point. Like, why is Hollywood pushing this propaganda way before the event, happens? Like, all of these things are happening in all of these movies presented to us. By the way, a lot of Hollywood movies and things like that are funded by the military. That's just happened historically by, the alphabet soup agencies and things like that. And so it doesn't surprise me that they would use things like that would psychologically manipulate people into believing a certain agenda. If you don't believe me, just look at the most obvious history that you'll probably believe is Hitler used to make tons of movies, just really elevating, what he was doing, and people would pay huge money, and they would fill cinemas up, and they would get the best looking soldiers and certain stories, and they would just continue pushing propaganda, German propaganda, to what they were doing. That's one of the ways he was able to manipulate a mass amount of people by using movies, into believing what he was preaching, So it's something that's been done since the beginning of media, even before movies, any government in charge used to use, letters and whatever they used to do announcements to kind of manipulate people into a certain direction. That's always happened. So it's not like a weird thing or some kind of conspiracy. That's happened historically. Anybody in power wants to use whatever means possible to stay in power or to have more power. It's quite simple, So I'll give you an example of how Hegelian dialectic works, which is what I believe happened right before our eyes in 9/11. For example, the agenda would be, I'll give you an example. The powers that be want the centralization of power through the monopoly of currency. It was a financial institution, World Trade Centers. It literally affected our economy, right? One of the theses would be the Federal Reserve, unbacked, intangible currency. The antithesis for that would be gold standard, honest money. That's like the reaction to the problem. And the synthesis of both of those becomes digital gold, like Bitcoin, like digital currency, fraudulent gold backed digital currency, owned by the same guys that caused the problem. And in history, both like big bankers, we're talking about Rockefellers or Rothschilds, like Henry Ford is one of the more known ones, where he was making cars for the Nazis, also making cars for America. You know what I mean? So these corporations, they don't care. They care about business, kind of like when, Pride Month comes along, everyone's shooting the rainbows out, right? Okay. They don't care. They just want your business. Doing that increases their business every month. They don't care about it. They could care less. All they want is to get every type of person that exists and make the money. The military does the same thing. And so we have all of that completely pushed that forward in the events of 9/11 by pushing this terror. And everyone was like, wow, we got to go do something about Afghanistan. We got to go down there. Okay. So let me give you a few examples of things that happened during that time. This is like the practical things that happened. Okay. So the 9/11 attacks upon the people of the United States deceptively blamed upon radical Muslims initiated a revolutionary change in the U.S. and the world. In September 11th, the September 11 attacks. The September 11 attacks led to an imperial presidency in the United States. An imperial presidency during the United States. 2 wars of aggression in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as secret conflicts and assassinations throughout the world. The renunciation of individual and human rights in the U.S. and Europe. The use of torture and elimination of 900 years of tradition in the revocation of habeas corpus. Massive increases in military spending. An innovative technocratic cradle to grave surveillance state in many Western countries, which is true, especially like London or like in a lot of Europe, incredibly surveyed. Our tracking, everything was completely, what we find normal, like our phones, the surveillance around the cities, everything, the facial recognition technology, everything started there. The Patriot Act pushed forward, and they can spy on your text messages, emails, calls, everything. This conversation, nobody's safe. Amongst the community of podcasters that talk about this kind of stuff, like, oh, I'm going to use this app or that app to be safe. I'm like, dude, you're in the system, bro. If FEMA camps come, I'm getting top bunk. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's coming. You know what I'm saying? An innovative technocratic, I already did that. The transformation of the character of political institutions in the United States and throughout the world, and oh my gosh, I can't speak. And throughout the world towards global, and push the world towards globalization, and, so those are the things that happened kind of politically and economically and just all because of the one event. It was basically the beginning of a reset that really propelled us into the use of technology in order to, spy on people around the world. And it's always been the excuse is, hey, what did we get out of spying on all Americans? We got no more 9/11s is what I heard Crenshaw say, which is, in my opinion, a little bit ridiculous, but I don't want to get into that. I want to upset my fellow Republicans, but that is one aspect of it. But the aspect that nobody really talks about is that there was way too many occult, supposed coincidences involved, and it's just completely overlooked, and seeing that politicians like George W. Bush, like other people in his office that are quoted. Actually, a good book to have. I have it right here. Game of Gods by Carl Teichrieb. He goes to meetings like UN meetings and big, huge meetings that our government has. And he wrote this book and he talks about how a lot of them are involved in pagan religions and occult, ancient, pretty much Babylonian practices and all kinds of weird stuff, and how that helps influence their political decisions. And we think that they're like, even the Democratic Party, who claims to be atheist, does a lot of things that are religious in nature. So if you're interested, I really recommend this book. I don't have any of these books. I have other books, but I don't have any of these. This one's my personal copy, and I highly recommend it, Game of Gods. But anyways, so let's go through some of the connections, okay? So you might have heard of Aleister Crowley, back in the classic rock era, the Black Sabbath and the Doors and Rolling Stones and the Beatles. Those bands, right? All of them have references to Crowley, Aleister Crowley. You might know probably the most famous one that obviously right off the bat says it, like Mr. Crowley, boom, 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 right? So we got Ozzy Osbourne over there talking about Mr. Crowley, Led Zeppelin. I mean, he was one of the band members, I forgot his name, was obsessed with Aleister Crowley. He even bought his mansion, which was painted, had rooms painted with blood, so that he can do some rituals and stuff like that, to invoke his music and all that good stuff. He created a set of magic that he changed. Basically, it's just magic with a K at the end, and rituals that his intended purpose was to completely revolutionize the world via Satan, via him being the Antichrist. He wanted to be the right hand of Satan, in his words, the right hand man of Satan. And so he would practice all sorts of religions and different things like that. Came from a Christian background and decided to leave that and create, he would do all kinds of rituals. And a lot of those rituals gave birth to a lot of our artists in those times. The Doors got their name from the Doors of Perception, Rolling Stones, and the Beatles. Literally, the Beatles have Aleister Crowley on one of the covers. And they talk about him in such a high way. He was their version of today we have Marina Abramovich, who practices pretty much the same thing. And we have all these celebrities attached to her. And so, again, they're creating this like culture, this like thing in the background that we don't see. We just consume the media completely unaware. We're singing the words. We don't know that it's connected to these like ritualistic things, So he created a kind of like a numerology, like a religion called Thelema, and he created a numerology thing, and on it he talks about these specific numbers that have different representations. So I'm going to cite these numbers, and you tell me if they sound familiar. Okay, here we go. The numbers are 11, 77, 175, and 93. Does that sound familiar? Those are important ritual numbers in the religion of Crowley. Anybody? That's right. Those are the numbers of the flights of every airplane that was involved, okay? The numbers of the flights are, again, 11, 77, 93, and 175. Aleister Crowley wrote about each of these numbers specifically and emphasized their importance. And let's start with 11. 11, first of all, the towers itself are gigantic 11. Okay, so 11 is an important number. It's like a representation of the twins or Gemini in the astrological calendar. But check it out. So firstly, 11 is the number of magic in itself. It is therefore suitable to all types of operations. Secondly, it is the sacred number par excellence of the new eon or aeon, as it is written in the book of the law, a book that he wrote, that he conjured, through a spirit according to him, 11 as well, their numbers who are of us. 77, which is another flight. The sublime and the supreme septenary is its mature magical manifestation through matter, written in Hebrew, Aeon, Sion, Capricornus, the devil of the tarot, which is the picture of the goat of the Sabbath on an altar. This also represents half of the formulation of sexual magic in both the OTO and the Kabbalah. It is also the 77 infernal names of the devil in the Satanic Bible. Okay, and this is according to Anton LaVey, famous Satanist, who created the Satanism Marilyn Manson likes to practice, And 93, which is all over the place. Oh my gosh, 93 is one of the numbers I see so much more often in media and in movies, and that one in 33 as well. The Kabbalistic gematria values the Greek words thelema, agape, which is a perversion of the biblical word agape, in other words, love, and Awaz, which is the entity he communicated with, in Crowley's magical system equate to the number 93, okay? 175, Liber. 175, Crowley's magical system is a ritual used to invoke any deity by adoration, okay? And he goes on to explain exactly what adoration is, all right? So again, those are all the flights, you know? And given that a lot of political people and including George Bush was quoting and citing these ancient occultist rituals, it's just like, really, that's a coincidence, you know? And if you are interested in what I just said, I recommend a book by William Ramsey. It's called Prophet of Evil, you know? It talks all about this, specifically about 9/11. I have one of his books here, but Abomination, but that's not, it doesn't talk about that. But William Ramsey, great investigator, has many books, and he goes in depth. And this is actually from his website, so you can read this on WilliamRamseyInvestigates.com, and you can look at his blog post, and that's right there. It'll talk all about this in that blog post. So, again, it's how many coincidences, you know what I'm saying? And so we'll move forward. There's so much to say. I'm trying to make this as short as possible, but it's hard to, you know what I'm saying? So let's go past that. And the reason they do this is, again, order out of chaos. They create chaos, and then we need a change. We got to go over there, look for weapons of mass destruction, and we just bumped up the military spending by trillions, by trillions, by trillions. And as of late, if you don't know, we pulled out and lost that war. You know, America hasn't won a war in a long time, but we sure as heck spend a lot of money, you know? And so that is definitely an issue. I think you can agree to that on either left or right paradigm. This is a little bit ridiculous, the amount of spending that went into that. There are pictures of women that were pregnant during that time, and you know, in front of the towers taking pictures because it wasn't yet announced as a terrorist attack. And now that kid is old enough to go to war, and one of my nephews is getting ready to be a Marine, and you know, he's getting shipped off today. Actually, today's his last day here. So it's just like, man, you know, we've been in that war for a long time. You know, babies are now grown men, and they're still going to participate probably in this situation, and it's just a little bit ridiculous, you know. Anyways, moving on. Okay, so like I said earlier, Hollywood foreshadows a lot of things, you know. Christopher Nolan, for example, talked about Sandy Hook before it happened in his Dark Knight movies. Many movies always show some sort of disaster that's going to happen in a certain city or state, and it's just like a movie, and then it happens, you know. You can call that coincidence. I call it foreshadowing or predictive programming, because they're setting that up. They're setting the whole predictive. They're setting the whole Hegelian dialect. They're going to cause chaos. We're going to say we need order, and they're going to present a solution. Here you go. Here's a solution. You know, that's going to help the elite ruling class. You know what I'm saying? So I want you to check out these video clips that I found. Thanks, MKP Kid. At MKP Kid, who kind of put this compilation. I was looking for videos myself to make my own compilation, and then he posted one, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that. And so check out this clip.
Time's up.
The World Trade Center bombing.
go. Did you see all the numbers? Play it back. Always trade centers. Oh, and that's, by the way, The Simpsons, this was like what, 6, 7 different movies. There is way more than that. There's like well over 20, 30, 40, a lot of movies. And if they're at the Trade Center or a huge tall building, someone's watch is always at that time. Someone's, the clock on the wall is always at that time. They always show the Twin Towers getting blown up or destroyed, you know. The cover of a Michael Keaton movie, I forgot what movie it was called, and he's crushing the Twin Towers, and so it goes on and on and on and on. Many. How many times before it's like, oh wow, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, it's up to you. You decide, you know. And lastly, if you're still here hanging in there, I want to show something that it might be a little boring to you, but how is this related to the biggest biblical prophecy, pretty much the biggest one in the Bible, you know, the biggest prophecy in the Bible, you know? And so hang in there. I have Dr. Michael Heiser in one of his videos explaining astrologically the importance of something that happens in the book of Revelation 12. It's the last book of the Bible. So check it out. Bear with me. I'm going to just kind of like edit it so you can see just little snippets of the more important things I want you to capture. And then, you know, we'll talk about it a little bit.
Now, what we have here, and again, this is part of a lecture I do in Revelation 12, is the constellation Virgo, the Virgin. If you go back and read Revelation 12, it is very obviously about the virgin birth, the birth of Jesus, the Messiah. But the signs and symbols that are used in Revelation 12 are well-known astronomical symbols. The constellation Virgo is the only one that represents a woman. For 20 days, Virgo is clothed with the sun. That's an astronomical term that means the sun appears in the constellation. That language comes from Revelation 12. But in Revelation 12, we not only have the sun clothing the woman, or inside the woman, we have the moon at her feet. The important note here is that for 20 days, Virgo gets clothed with the sun. But the exact day when the moon is under her feet can occur only during an 80-minute window within that span of days. So both of these signs, the sun in Virgo and the moon at her feet, are important. And the sun is about midway in her midsection. Again, there's symbology there as far as a pregnancy. If we look at the alignment of constellations, here's Virgo in the middle. I've taken the pictures out and just done the line drawings. Sun in the midst of Virgo, moon at her feet right here. Above Virgo's head is Leo, of course, the lion symbology, the Lion of Judah. Within Jupiter, at the very same time that Virgo is clothed with the sun and the moon is at her feet, we have a conjunction between Regulus and Jupiter. Jupiter is known as the king star in ancient astronomy. It's because it's the biggest one. Regulus, of course, if you know Latin, you know that's terminology for the king. That is the king star. So we have the king planet, Jupiter, and the king star, Regulus, in conjunction. If you did any reading on, like out of Martin's book or some other sources, this is very important symbology for a royal birth. Below here, below the woman, okay, we have the sun in Virgo and the Virgin, moon at her feet. In modern zodiac, we have here Scorpio and then Libra, the scales. In the ancient world, these were combined. If you can conceive of this in your imagination, here's the tail of Scorpio, and then Libra was thought to be the claws that were joined right here. So this entire set of what are now two constellations were in the ancient world viewed as one, and it was known as the dragon. Again, that's right out of Revelation 12. Here's a superimposed picture over it. Now we have Scorpio and Libra, the scales, but in the ancient times this was one known as the dragon. All of these things did occur in a year, that fits well for Jesus' birth, and that is 3 BC. What I've just laid out for you is common knowledge in many planetaria throughout the country and in Europe, that this is one of the candidates for the birth of Christ. It's the only birth year that accounts for all of these symbols. So if you read in the academic literature about candidates for the birth of Christ, they range anywhere from 2 BC to 6 BC. But none of the scholarly literature that I've seen considers Revelation 12, and I think that's the missing element. The real sort of interesting thing about 3 BC is since this concatenation of signs can only occur in an 80-minute window, we know exactly the date of the birth of the Messiah in 3 BC, and that date is September 11th, which, again, this kind of spooks people. September 11th, 3 BC is the only time, the only day, for many, many, many centuries, that you could have all of these signs come together.
Any words? Did you know about that? Yeah. If you see like Bill Maher's video attempt on trying to discredit Christianity and zeitgeist on religion and all these other, things and ancient aliens, and one of the most common things that I even see modern day philosophers that are very popular and smart use is that Jesus is just a regurgitation of other pagan gods or Greek gods because he was born on the 25th, blah, 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 blah. No. First of all, God was using stars for signs and signals way before astrological symbols even existed. And as you probably saw, the astrological symbols in the Hebrew cosmology and their understanding was different from when we understand it today. And then pagan religions kind of turned it around to make it seem something else. Like now we have girls, buying their lattes every morning. It's like, I'm a Capricorn, I'm a Libra, or not even them, just like, and, I don't know, your energy's all off. And, of course, that's so Scorpio. You must be a Scorpio. Oh my gosh, I can't stand that stuff. It's different. The way the Bible uses astrology and astronomy doesn't depend on your type of character and things like that, But that's the separate subject. The point is that people aren't aware that possibly, and this is with all the evidence, scholarly evidence and astrological significance, which the Bible does use, biblical astronomy, not the astrology we understand today, to tell John was telling the story of the birth of Jesus Christ, all right, on 9/11. And to me, I mean, if powers, we're fighting powers and principalities in high places, in other words, spiritual entities, that they're going to go against the Bible. They're going to mimic it, turn it around, and make it into something that's deceitful. That's how Satan lied to Adam and Eve in the garden. He took something that was kind of true and just gave it a different outcome, and then boom, he deceived Adam and Eve. And that's how it works, man. That's how evil works. That's how politicians work. That's how most of us, when we lie sometimes, that's what we'll take aspects of truth, and turn it into a lie or an anti-truth, which is worse because it's intentionally made to just completely go against that one thing that is actually true, And it wouldn't surprise me that people in the occult, which often want to discredit Jesus or mock him, like in Masonry, the number 33 is important because in some of that religion, in part, they actually mock or celebrate the fact that Jesus died at 33. That's why that number is important to them. Okay, so again, they take the same event, the day 9/11, which in the Hebrew cosmology and the understanding of the Bible would be a moment to celebrate the birth of the Savior. The birth of the Savior. It was a moment to be remembered for salvation, for the restoration of nations, for the unity of mankind, okay? Now, it's flipped around on its head, and it's remembered as a day of terror. And isn't it propagated that way too? Never forget, never forget, never forget. Yeah, of course, we're not going to forget, Never forget. But now they talked that day also helped serve to move forward the globalization of economy, to move forward, to bring us together as a world, because now we're all fighting terrorism. We're all fighting an idea, which is terror. An idea is very dangerous. And if you understand the premise of the movie Inception, that's exactly what's going on with propaganda. You get incepted with an idea, and it becomes our truth, our ideology in which we subscribe to. And then we believe anything we have to believe in order to fight or to do whatever it is to propagate or to make sense of that idea that we've adopted. It's very dangerous. You know what I mean? So we have to look at what we subscribe to be truth. And this is really the reason I do these videos, or the show that we have, is because we want people to make their own decisions. There's so much information in a world of information. Being ignorant is a choice. You know what I'm saying? So again, they flipped it on its head, and now it's like, the economy is your savior. The government is your savior. We will help you out. We'll unite everyone. It's like their own form of globalization, or also known as the New World Order, which used to be a phrase that was complete conspiracy. And now, Australia and different countries over there are using it like it's just, tongue in cheek. Like, yeah, this is the first day of New World Order, and they're complete lockdown. All their rights are taken away. You do what we say, and it's all about, medical governance, pharmaceutical governance. There's no choice. Your body, our choice. You know what I mean? And so all of that is happening, and they openly just say it. Oh yeah, New World Order. New World Order is where we are. And this happened because of another great reset, which is called that. And that's, of course, a different subject, so we'll talk about that some other time. But anyways, I've babbled on enough, and this is already too long of a video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you don't know who we are Fire Theft Radio. Usually I have my friend Omar over here on my left when we do when we do podcast. And you can find us at firetheftradio.com. Like, share, subscribe to our Instagram page. I'm trying to do this and grow more. I don't know if all of these will make it to YouTube, but that's the intention. You can find us on any podcatcher except for Spotify. You can, iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, Podbean, things like that, and check us out. If you'd like to send us an email or DM me here directly, go ahead and do so, and we can have some conversations. I can send you all the links of everything I was talking about. Like I said, I used mostly all of the WilliamRamseyInvestigates.com information, and you can go get most of what I just said today on his website or his book, Prophet of Evil. Check that out. So, hey, again, thanks for sitting around. Maybe this went on a little longer than I'd like it to, but sorry, just wanted to get it across, all right? I'll see you guys later, and don't forget to spread the fire. Bye.